Hello, Linda. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me for the Empathic Leadership Summit. How are you today?
Hi, Sinead. It's great to be here. Thank you for being here with me. I'm great today. Thank you. Yes,
Fantastic.
fantastic.
Okay, your energy's up. That's amazing.
Oh,
Well
yes.
done, you. Okay, so tell us a bit about yourself and what your work is all about.
Okay. Essentially, my work is all about energy, and that started. I've almost been in business 27 years now,
Oh, right.
but
Wow.
it started even before I knew anything about high sensitivity or empathy or anything like that. I now understand the reasons for me needing to know, needing to understand about energy because it impacts us so very much, and there's so much we can. It's very empowering when you understand how to master your energy and the energy around you and what's impacting you. And I just had this need and desire to learn about that. And then as soon as I learned about it, I just knew I wanted to share it with other people. So that's why I started my business. And it's kind of evolved over the years. I started as a feng shui practitioner and holistic health consultant, sort of talking about energy of the body, energy of the environment. But my sessions with people always went so much deeper, and it's just sort of evolved into the focus being now just purely energy and all the ways it impacts us.
Okay, well, I love that so much. It's such a huge part of my focus as well. So we're definitely on the same wavelength. Okay, so before we dive in, because you're going to teach us all about an empowered environment today, I can't wait to hear all of your wisdom. But before that, what has your experience been of empathic leadership, or maybe a lack of empathic leadership in, over the course of your career?
Well, I've experienced both. Such a difference when you have someone who is empathic versus someone who isn't. So, I mean, I can remember one boss who really wasn't, and I used to have to prepare myself before I went into work because it was almost like, and I didn't know anything about energy then. And it was almost like I had to prepare myself energetically just to be even in that environment, and it felt like it was a constant battle. I could not be myself. He micromanaged everybody. And there was, even though I loved the job, the work that I did, and I loved my co-workers, he made it extremely difficult for all of us to do our jobs properly because there was always this sense of you have to be ready for whatever's coming next.
Yeah.
And then I can remember this other time, one boss that I had, and it was interesting because we were in a fairly large organization with lots of different departments. And for this workplace, we had one central filing system, if you like, and there were two ladies who ran that. So it was like in the basement, had all the files. So if anybody wanted files, it was it was actually building a new city in England, at Milton Keynes. You may have heard of it. You
Okay,
probably heard of it.
wow.
So it was working with the development corporation for that. So there were all these different departments, and all the files were kept in this one place. Now, you can imagine that most of the directors and leaders didn't even consider these filing ladies, right? They were just, it was just like, I need a file, bring it now, kind of thing. But our boss, we were in the commercial department, and our boss understood, he was very empathic, he understood the importance of treating everybody the same. And he really made sure that people were heard and people were included. And because they were sort of on their own in this filing system, they didn't really belong to a department, he made sure he always included them in everything that our department did.
Okay.
And I could tell you one thing, if he needed something from that filing system, and maybe lots of directors did, guess who was going to get theirs first? He was. Because he took care of them. He cared about them. He included them. And I always admired that about him, not only for including them, but just how he was with everybody. And, he didn't treat anybody differently. He always had time for everyone. And if you needed something, he made sure that he would listen and that he would always do his best for you. And it was just such a different experience.
Right. Look at that. I mean, it's just an element of humanity there, isn't there?
Right.
You know, that should be the most normal thing in the world in a workplace. But I suppose it depends on the culture of the place, and the leadership. So that's fantastic. They're two great examples. So which did you prefer?
You can guess. I definitely prefer the empathic leader. In fact, we are still in touch today. You know, we
Oh,
still
right.
communicate occasionally, even though I'm thousands of miles away.
Okay,
But
fantastic. Look at that. You
yeah.
see, you make a connection and then it lasts, kind of thing. Amazing. So you have
Yeah.
so much experience, and I love the way that you were kind of working with energy before you knew you were working with energy. That's
Yeah.
incredible. So when was it that you started to realize, you know, about energy and being empathic or being highly sensitive?
Well, I started learning about energy. I would say, first of all, I started having an interest in nutrition. And this was really just for personal reasons. I wasn't going to do anything with it. But the more I understood about what we put into our body and the lifestyle choices that we make and how that impacts our health and well-being, the more I understood that, the more excited I got. And, you know, I thought, I have to do this. This is something I want to share with people. And then around the time I was thinking of starting a business doing that, I started hearing about feng shui and this idea that the energy of our environment has such a major impact on us. So at that time I went and I bought, I think there were 2 books on it at the time, there's thousands now, but I
Yeah.
bought the only 2 books I could find on it,
Right.
read all about it, and again, knew I had to do this. So I took my practitioner training. And then I started my business doing those 2 things. So I had this understanding of energy. I learned about it, how it impacts us, how we can work with it so that it supports us. And it's just kind of evolved. And I realized as I worked with people that it was always so much deeper than we thought. People often would say to me, if I went and did a feng shui consultation, they'd say, wow, this is more like a therapy session, you know,
Right. Okay.
because it's not just about where do you put stuff, it's about what's going, your environment is a reflection of you. And so that's what we're working with. The understanding of high sensitivity and empathy didn't come until much later. I would say maybe 12 years ago. I read the book, you know, in fact, somebody was telling me about the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, and I heard about it 2 or 3 times, and it just kind of went over my head. I didn't think about it. I didn't identify with the term high sensitivity. And eventually I thought, well, I'm going to read the book because there might be something in there that will that I can use to help my clients. And I read the book, and it was like an epiphany. I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, this makes total sense of who I am, of everything I've done, the reasons for me being so focused on energy. And I also realized that sort of naturally, I think the people who came to me were highly sensitive themselves. And because I had I had an understanding of that, I could work with them and know what they were experiencing. So it's been an unfolding. And it's always fascinating to me that once you start working with energy, you just naturally, a flow naturally happens and you start to move in the directions you're supposed to go.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. I can relate to that, you know, that when I heard the term highly sensitive as well, I kind of looked at it, it was like, you know, it kind of went over my head as well. I think a lot of people have had that experience, a lot of the people I've spoken to. And then it's a case of like when you're actually reading the book, you're just like, what is this? This is describing my life, you know? So it's a beautiful realization. So if anyone's watching that hasn't read it, it's The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. I presume that's the book you're talking about, Linda.
Yes,
Yes,
that's the
indeed.
one.
Okay, so tell us about the connection, you know, between energy flow, being an empath, and your environment.
Well, if you think about, you know, as empaths, highly sensitive people, empaths, I know they're not the same, but, you know, they're both, highly sensitive people and empaths have a deeper connection, a deeper feeling of energy. And environments become much more important the more sensitive you are to that. And even if you're not aware consciously of an environment affecting you, it does affect you very deeply. And your environments, the spaces where you spend time, they are reflections of you. So your home, an interesting thing is, and I've done this many times, is that you can go into someone's home and kind of read their life. You can have an idea of what's going on in their life, where there are challenges and where things are going really well, without knowing anything about them.
Right.
So everything about you is reflected in your environment. And so as an empath, that is so much more important to have awareness of that, because then you can work with it and ensure that the energy you have there, wherever you're spending time working, supports your energy, so that you can then be a better leader with other people, but also so that you have more awareness of how things are affecting other people, the people who work with you, for you. And that allows you to just come from a more empowered place of strength when you're working, whatever work you do. So the more you have an understanding of that, the more it empowers you to support you and support the people who are working with you.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. And do you think that a lot of leaders or even organizations would underestimate that?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I worked with many companies when I was actually going out and doing feng shui consultations. And usually people would come and call me because there were problems. Some things not working in their business isn't going very well. They're struggling with employee issues within their business. And so I would go in and look around and talk about what I saw that I felt was impacting that, and how they could make changes, and that the changes would sometimes just unbelievable, just dramatic, I mean, immediate, sometimes improvements, just by having that awareness of, okay, this is an area that could be impacting my employees, and so let me work with that. I've had, there was a case, I'll just share this quick one with you to give you an example. It was a woman who had a hairdressing salon and spa,
Right.
and she was having a lot of trouble with employees. They were, there's always something going on. They were talking about her behind her back. There were disruptions. The energy just was not good. There was not a good feeling there. And so she asked me to go and have a look, and I had a look at the whole place, but I mainly focused on her office and how that was set up. And I'll share some of the things in a minute, but it was I felt she was very disempowered in her own workspace.
Right.
And so I suggested some changes. And I think it was within a week of her making those changes, she called me and she said, "Oh my God, it's amazing." She said, "This one person just suddenly handed in her resignation. She's left." She said, "And I thought she was my best employee." She said, "I now realize that she was the one stirring up everybody else."
Okay.
And so now she's gone and everything's settled down, and everybody's happy. And
Wow,
it's just amazing, the direct connection there is between whatever's going on in your environment. You make changes to that energy and you start to see things change.
Oh my God,
It's
isn't that
incredible.
amazing? So can you give us a bit of an insight into what her office environment was like? Yeah.
Yes. So like many people in that kind of situation, the main focus is the salon, the spa, where people come in and what people will see. So her office was tucked away in the back. It was a tiny little room in the back that became kind of the junk room, so she had a desk in there. She was sort of crammed in there, and there were lots of other things in there as well. And one of the main things, and it's such a simple thing, and you think, well, how can that make such a big difference? But I promise you it can. Her desk was positioned so that her back was to the door. And, so there were two main things I wanted her to deal with in the office. One was to get rid of anything that didn't need to be in there, find other storage solutions, but anything that didn't absolutely relate to her running her business effectively, everything else had to go. And then the second thing was to, she couldn't actually move the desk. Ideally, I would have asked her to move the desk so that she was in a position of power, which means seeing the door. We call that the command position.
Okay.
Because when you have your back to the door, it's like, and as I said to her, you know, things are going on behind your back. You are not in control of your business. It's like unexpected things will keep happening. And that's exactly what was showing up in her business. So she couldn't move her desk physically because the room was too small. But what I asked her to do was put up a mirror so that as she was sitting at her desk, she could just look in the mirror and see the door. And it doesn't matter whether people are coming in or they're not coming in, right? Because you might say, well, nobody comes to my office. It doesn't matter. It does matter. It's an energy thing. Right? It's just a more empowering position. If you can see the door, energetically speaking, it's more empowering. And so those were the two main changes I asked her to make. The others were just sort of decluttering generally in spaces within the salon, but that was it. And everything improved right away.
Wow, isn't that incredible? I mean, it's amazing. Like, I've always been really fascinated with feng shui and just the flow of energy through the home and allowing it in and allowing it out, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
so tell us more about the command position if someone is able to create that. So that's facing the door, is it?
Yes, it's facing the door. So as I'm sitting in my office now, so the command position will be so that you can see the door, which I can. The wall is behind me. So wall behind you means you have some solid support behind you.
Okay.
And then you can see the door. Now, the ideal place is that it's not directly in front of you. So my door's not directly there. It's over to the side.
Okay.
So when you have it directly in front of you, energy comes in through the door and it's kind of coming right at you. So when it's off to the side, you can see it, but it's not coming right at you, if you like. And, you know, the important thing to remember is there are the ideal feng shui conditions, right? And one of them would be you always have your back to the wall and you can face the door. Sometimes you can't do that, as in that case. Her office was much too small. She didn't have the room to move her desk to that position. So we always look for, okay, well, we can't do that. So what can we do? There's always an answer. There's always something you can do. And, and people have said to me time and time again, you know, I never would have thought that just making small, simple changes could have just such a dramatic impact and make such a difference.
Wow,
and they
it's
really
incredible, isn't it? The small things that we can do. So,
Yeah.
So can I ask you what has happened in your opinion when it comes to, you know, the working styles having changed, maybe over COVID, a lot of people at home, the connection between people and their environments very different. What's going on energetically there, or how can we manage that if we're working from home?
Yes, working from home definitely brings its own challenges because very often, depending on who else you've got living in the home, obviously, but very often it's seen as, oh, you're at home, you know, so you can be interrupted at any time. Sometimes people don't have designated space for an office. And so they might be in a corner of the kitchen, for example, or another room that has another function to it. So, you know, again, ideal conditions, if you're working from home, would be you have a separate and very dedicated workspace and it's yours and nothing else goes on there. So you don't have your personal bills in there. You don't have, it's not a storage room for other things. Ideally, it is 100% your workspace. That's the ideal. Now, that doesn't always happen. You haven't always got the room for that. So if you don't have the room for that, then you have to start looking at, okay, how can I create that as much as possible within the space that I have? I had one lady who ran a personal training business and she was in an apartment and she had, very creatively, I thought, actually used the closet space, so you could open the closet doors and her little desk and everything was in the closet. But that didn't support her in terms of visibility for her business. Energetically, she's like hidden away in a closet, right? So what we had to do was bring that desk out of there, find a position within the apartment that that didn't affect anything else too much and screen it off so that it was a very dedicated space, but it didn't affect the rest of the home. So that's what you have to look at. And the thing to remember is your home is such a direct reflection of you and everything that's going on in your life. And so even if you're not working from home, it still has a major influence on your career, on your professional life, even if you work away from home, because the energy of your home affects your energy so very deeply, especially as an empath.
Yes.
And so your home needs to be your safe space. It needs to nurture you. It needs to support you. An example would be if there's a lot of clutter around. I mean, that's one of the worst things for an empath or a highly sensitive person. Yeah, and many people will say, oh, I just can't stand it. It just, you feel it. It just feels like everything is wrong if you have a cluttered space. And that's not to say you have to be compulsive about, and completely neat. There's life happens, right?
And children happen.
Yes, and children happen. And let's say you're in a legal profession.
Of a tidy, clear home.
Let's say you're in a legal profession. Legal profession, you're working on a case. I've seen them, they'll have papers all on the desk, on the tables, on the floor, because they need all those things. I always think of it as there's two kinds of chaos. There's active chaos, which is when you're working on something and you need all of that going on around you. Like if you're cooking a meal, you get all your ingredients out, the pots and pans,
creativity,
and then you prepare your meal, right? It's chaos, but it's active. Something's happening.
Brilliant.
Now, passive chaos would be if you finish your meal and you just leave that there. Passive chaos would be if the legal trial, whatever it was, ended and you left everything there. So it's once the action is completed, then everything needs to have a place to go.
Fantastic. It's a great distinction between those two. Yeah, because I think people do get to that point where they declutter and then it's almost like, don't let anything be put out of place, but we can't live like that. We can't have a family home like that. So I love those two. So was it active and passive chaos? Is it? Amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely be taking that with me for sure. This is amazing. And what about, say, an environment, for empathic leadership, like how does the energy of your workspace affect you as a leader? How does it affect your creativity as a leader? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Well, we talked about the command position. That's one definite thing. But, how you feel in your workspace when you walk in there, what do you have around you that is impacting you? Because everything has energy to it. So let me share an example of that. I think highlights this very well. So I had a client who had started his own business. I think he was just over a year in business. And although things had started off quite well, they were sort of going down and down and down. He wasn't getting the clients and he had employees. He was paying people with his credit card. I mean, it was just, he was mounting a lot of debt. So things were not going well. So I went to his office space, in a beautiful office space, multiple offices. And it was interesting because as I was walking around, he had some very unusual items there, some beautiful pieces of artwork, maybe an unusual decorative clock or something like that. And so I would just ask him about, tell me about this piece and what does this mean to you? And it was interesting to me because a lot of his father had passed away and a lot of these things had belonged to his father. So he bought them, put them in his office. And so there was a lot of, as I would say, the energy of his father around him. So then I asked him about his relationship with his father, which had not been very good. But the most important thing that really sort of rang alarm bells for me was that he said his father had been very upset that he was going to leave his very successful job and start his own business. And he kept telling him, most businesses fail within 2 years. So here he was going into his second year and business was starting to fail. So the way I saw it energetically was that was the message he had around him, right? All those reminders of his father and that constant message that you're going to fail within 2 years. And so I asked him if he would move all of those things out and replace them with things that inspired him, that motivated him, that made him feel successful. And made him feel, what was possible rather than, that the business might fail. And so as soon as he did that, people started calling him for business. I mean, it can be that quick. but it's just what are you surrounding yourself with? Another example would be my own office. I had a nice piece of artwork behind me, which I really liked. I have it in front of me now, but I was on a webinar with someone who she does publicity. And so she was doing, just as a quick exercise, she was going around to each person on the Zoom call and talking to them about, you know, if you do an interview, what do people see, right? And how does that reflect you and what it is that you do professionally? And so she came to me, she said, "Are you an artist?" And I said, "No, I'm not an artist." And she said, "Well, I don't have any idea what you do by looking at your background." I thought, oh my gosh, I should know that. I should know that. And so what I did was I moved the piece of artwork over there. I put my bookshelf up with some books, and I've got my energy kind of prayer flag thing there. So it gives people an idea of, oh, okay, energy, and you know, you've got some books there. So it gives people more of an idea about me. Not only that, but it's when I enter the room, the energy of it now is more reflective of who I am and what I do, rather than just being a nice space.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting actually, because I always kind of go for a background that makes me feel calm.
Yes.
You know, because I kind of, you know, if I'm doing a lot of calls, I kind of see it all day myself. So I like to have colors that make me feel calm and grounded. But I'd definitely take that on board, maybe to include something that communicates something about your business as well, or something about your profession. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I tell people this all the time. So, you know, this is the thing. You miss things when you're trying to do it for yourself. You miss things. You know, I would tell people this all the time. How does your workspace reflect who you are and what you do? And, you know, how do you feel when you walk in there? Do you walk in and feel, okay, you want to feel calm? Yes, but you also want to feel professional, and this represents the work that I do with people. And it just a subtle thing, but it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a fantastic tip for everybody. I suppose in particular, you've got the online business owners like myself, but then it's the same, I suppose, in an office setting, isn't it?
It is exactly the same in an office setting. And, you know, people will often say to me, well, it doesn't matter. Nobody comes to visit me in my office. I say, that doesn't matter. It's the energy that you are putting out about, well, one, it's the energy that's affecting you. And then whatever energy is affecting you is the energy that you are putting out to the world. So what is the energy that you are putting out? Or what do you want people to feel? You know, if I work with an accountant and their office is just full of, and this is true, I've done many of these, where, you know, there's just papers all over the desk, and, you know, the bookcases are stacked with papers. And if I, as a potential client, walked into that office, would I think that person is on the ball and would not lose my stuff, you know, and would have everything that I needed from her on time? No, I wouldn't feel confident about that. I would think, oh shit, my stuff might get lost in all of that. And so even though her clients didn't go to her office, that was the energy she was putting out. So, you know, yes, whether you're in your home or you're outside of the home, the energy of your space matters. What is there, not only for how you feel, but think of it as the energy that you are putting out about you and what you do.
Okay, wow. Oh my God, you've taught us so much today, Linda. Just as a final point, so are they little plants behind you? Is it important to bring in some nature as well? Is that a good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question. It is. It is important to have some nature if you can, particularly for sensitive people, for empaths, because it's grounding. So the picture that I mentioned that I used to have behind me, I have now in front of me, it's just a beautiful field of sunflowers, the sun is shining, you know. And so bringing nature in some way, whether it's with plants, real or fake plants, it doesn't matter, as long as you don't let fake plants accumulate lots of dust, which they can. Pictures, maybe if you like a water feature, it could be any sort of anything related to nature. Bringing that into your environment is just a very grounding thing to do, and it really supports your energy as an empath or as a sensitive person, and helps you feel better. And it's the same with in your home. Right. It's just bringing some nature into your environment is a very calming, grounding thing to do.
Fantastic. Yes. Oh, I'm very inspired now. Like often kind of clear out and move around my office and my space. So I'm feeling that inspiration now, in
Yes.
terms of like just bringing in that empowering energy into our space. That's what it's all about, as you began.
That's what it's all about. Yeah,
just
it
feeling empowered.
empowers you. You bring in that empowered energy, which empowers you, and then you go on to empower others. Right? It's all that flow. It's that cycle of energy. But it starts with you and what is happening in your space that affects your energy and your ability to lead, to be creative, to make decisions. It all impacts you.
Amazing. It's so beautiful that you've outlined that today, because I think perhaps a lot of us empathic people have a sense of that, but it's lovely to hear it really, really outlined clearly for us, and lots of tips there. So thank you so, so much. Linda, where can people find more information, or do you perhaps have a resource you'd like to share with our attendees?
Yes. Well, just general information about me can always go to my website, which is lindabins.com. Very simple. But I do have a resource, and that is a workplace energy assessment. It's just a little form, a little questionnaire with some multiple choice answers, very quick to do. And once you've done that, you have the option, if you would like, where I'll do a Zoom session with you and walk you through your results and maybe make some suggestions about things you could change.
Fantastic. I think I might be first on the list there, Linda. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and energy today. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you soon again.
Much.
Bye.